There is something very unusual going on that's clearly been an ongoing thing in the West Texas State Forest. And this is a case I've been looking forward to for a while, to be exact. This case takes place around this forest, and there are all these stories now about what's known as the missing Texas 40. And it can no longer be considered coincidence, folks, that these people are disappearing at the same time certain events are taking place. We're seeing hikers, we're seeing travelers, we're seeing hunters of certain stripes and creeds just vanishing without a trace in this basically very private forest. And so that's what's going to be covered here. Look forward to it. There'll be an update after that as well. Thank you. So today I officially am going to be covering one of the most unbelievable missing person cases in all of Texas history. It's called Missing in Texas: The Many Mysterious Disappearances Linked to One Single Forest. Quite a few of these missing person events occur in the great outdoors that involve hunters and fishermen, but they all end the same way, normally in a tragedy. 3 young men set out to go duck hunting, but nothing could have prepared their loved ones for what was about to unfold. The young men went off on the hiking trail but never returned, and a search soon ensued. They had launched their boat before the daybreak Friday morning to go duck hunting, and their bodies were then recovered not except weeks later. Douglas Moore went deer hunting in Cherokee County, and he never returned. When his friends went to look for him, they also vanished. Michael Chambers then also disappeared on March 10th, 2017, and then he walked off on the trail and never returned as well. And I'm going to be covering this in depth for some reason today, and there's going to be some pictures and so on that's really going to showcase this. I've gotten the question, folks, from time to time, why don't we do like a radio show program or something? Well, folks, I don't even have the time to do an actual radio show. Yeah, literally. This is not the time for that. The people think that I could just take my my associate who's a lawyer and he could go take care of these reports that I have to do. No, because I can't trust him, believe it or not, to do that, because he does good work and he's doing good work on untangling bank accounts and things. But he's very lazy, and he's not going to do this type of thing to get this whole report and this police report done. So I end up having to do all these types of events and tasks and things entirely myself, okay? And I write the legal briefs and things like that myself, using the original federal laws and so on, okay? And that's what's required sometimes, especially when you are a state national, the way that we're talking here. So I do it all myself. Sometimes I also have someone in the Fiverr group and so on who rewrites certain things I have to have rewritten in certain areas on legal briefs and things like that. But I take care of it myself because that's really the way this works. And I don't have time to do these things that people would imagine, because doing the things that I'm doing right now, we already are full out. And even the people that are working on the Hunter's case, they are full out because they're setting up state courts, they're setting up other petite juries, they're looking at other facts regarding the Moab criminal case, they're looking at other facts regarding the Hunters. They don't even have time to talk to me. And so when you get into this type of thing, and you recognize the reality of the world, that even when it's in its best shape, if you're really in the world and you're not just cruising along and cruising through, you're not going to have time to do anything else. So, and that's just the whole truth of the matter. I need to have these things done pretty much nearly perfect. So in these specific cases, I'm doing it all on my own. And when I'm setting up the podcasts and things like that, that's even being done. A very, very, very small team does that. And so this is going to be very important to cover this for some reason. This is the missing person cases that go all the way throughout Texas. We're talking going back 10 years. And they all literally went missing in this national forest. They call it the disappearance of the missing Texas 40. And it's right there near the Montgomery counties, right by the border of Montgomery counties into Galveston, which is also known as the Texas Killing Fields. That's correct. And so the Rangers were tracking it. And keep in mind, there was nothing unusual here. There was nothing like that seemed off for some reason. Nothing really dangerous. And yet, more than 40 times, people went missing in this Texas National Forest right up there near Corpus Christi. And so I'm going to be showing some information on this because this is, again, another reason why I have certain papers regarding depositions actually being served, is because of incidents like this. This has started to open up an interesting reality that has been going on in these parks, and according to what I've been told, it's been going on in these parks, including the Alaska National Park, the Texas Field and Wildlife Park and Preserve, and several other national parks since like the 1900s. I mean, a long, long time. And so I'm going to be showing some of these parks in the actual video a little bit. And when this is discussed in the case, you're going to understand exactly why. It's because nobody else has covered this, folks. They have not looked into what in the world happened with the missing Texas 40. And so for this long of a time, this whole zone has just been entirely ignored. That's near Montgomery County. They just saw it and they were like, oh, they were just kind of curious. But they didn't see anything unusual about the fact that literally hundreds have gone missing in this forest over this time period. And so, and it right next to Galveston, of all places. And so, I'm going to be going in depth on this. And this is again why there's no time for anything. There really is no time for anything. And if you are doing, the correct things and you're not just cruising through life, you are not going to have time to do things. So I'm covering this because no one else stepped up to the plate. And this is very important to understand what was going on with these missing people. The hunters would go through Cherokee County. They would go into this Texas forest. There's many, many reports, apparently, about the Rogers family and similar people who have gone into these forests, including the forest that's in Massachusetts, but especially this forest here near the Texas Killing Fields, and they would just go in there and they'd vanish, never to be heard from again. And that's no coincidence, folks, because, of course, now we know finally, through verified, confirmed evidence and also some eyewitness statements I was able to get back from an associate, that Clark Jones indeed was in there and that the hunters were in these forests. And the fact that they were in these forests and hardly anybody really cared about it says it all. This is why things are being done so specifically. This is why I go into such detail in some of the videos that are done and any of the kind of work that I do. People need to recognize no one else is stepping up to the plate on certain things. So if you see something and you truly notice something, you need to step up to the plate and start working on it. You need to do something about it because no one else is going to do it but you. That's correct. Put on your real outfit. Put on your real big boy pants, and all of the rest that they kind of say sometimes. But that seriously applies to this situation of the missing Texas 40. And we're talking, there is at least 3 national forests Not one or two, at least three. Or three forests, at least three, where this went on. And the Texas forest is one of the most significant examples. Douglas Moore, he was a victim that went missing in this strange forest, and so we're going to explore it. And then we're going to explore the next case that comes shortly after that, which is likewise a very important case. It kind of links into the same specific issue. And it is time people really pay attention. And so I hope that you guys can get these videos out there far and wide and really, really pass the word onward. Hardly anyone is looking into these forests, and this is one of the most significant issues of our time. Thank you again. A dean decided to look in the case. She came across dozens of reports of missing persons, apparently, and missing people in the Missing Texas 40, where they would go missing in the Texas National Forest in March of 2012. But since then, the missing reports have just blown up and exploded. Captain Ronnie Sylvia, spokesman for Montgomery County Sheriff, noted that 6 of the listed were described as missing from Harris County, with the qualifier south of Montgomery and Humboldt County. Given that 2 cases were added by mistake and some of those initially reported missing have been found, that leaves 16 missing persons remaining in just Montgomery County alone, Sylvia said. Those include Toby Ray Coleman, Michelle Prasick, Jane McDonald Crone, Daryl Calhoun, and Michael Beoden. The Cold Case Division of Montgomery County handles not only murders, but also missing person cases. The combined list of cases is insurmountable. Last year, the Sheriff's Office requested funding for 3 detectives and a sergeant to create a missing person squad, but never got it due to pressing needs. Captain Ken DeFore of the Liberty County Sheriff said Thursday that 5 or 6 people were reported missing in just 4 years in Liberty County alone. When someone goes missing, DeFore said, the Sheriff's Office mounts a search officially. We do ask for support and backup from the fire department. One of those still in the missing Texas 40 list is Allie Lowitzer, who disappeared from Spring in Harris County after getting off the school bus one time in April of 2010. Her younger brother was at home but did not see her arrive, so presumably she never made it home. Joanne Lowitzer said that she had planned to walk back to the home address but never showed up. It would be another year before she connected with the dean in her efforts to find the missing daughter. On Thursday, she added the name Clint Miller, age 27, last seen at 5 p.m. on May 25th. His Liberty County home in Mass Bluff burned down that same night. So, people are just perplexed by this, and it's not adding up that Douglas Moore went missing in this same area, and he went off into the Texas National Forest and never returned. And of course, it really does not add up because there's some peculiar people here, and Clark Jones was known to visit, of course, the Texas National Forest. We know that now. Clint Miller was another one of these people who disappeared and never showed up again. And I'm just saying, people, at a certain point, with the David Paulides documentary and similar things that have really been covering it, at a certain point it stops being a coincidence. This is a very serious situation that needs to be fully investigated. And I mean, we need multiple departments on this, not just the park rangers looking at this. We need people from all levels of our local county sheriff's office and our local regular government finally looking into this. This has got to be one of the most just unbelievable cases of people automatically going missing in the forest that I think I've ever encountered. And it being in Texas is just what shocks me even more. That's right next to Spring County. Thank you. The National Texas Forest of Fright. Here's an unexplained episode of a man named Christopher who went off hiking and vanished in Georgia in the year 2002. He was only walking toward a road in a wooded area with a group of coworkers at 1 p.m. One of the coworkers looked back and they saw him walking in the same direction as everyone else. But they looked back again and he was nowhere to ever be seen at all. So he disappeared, essentially. Christopher's boot was found hanging on some barbed wire. His work tools, a blue fiber from the pants, and 12 cents were found on the ground, according to Enigma Earth. His other boot was found several months later, 900 yards away, perfectly folded. It sounds like something carried him over a barbed wire fence, and one boot, as well as his tool bag being snagged in the barbed wire, were left behind for no reason. For change to fall out of his pocket, he must have been turned upside down, literally. The other boot being 900 yards away tells you he was not walking at all. He wouldn't leave one boot behind on the fence, for example. He was never found, even after all of these rescuers, searchers, even the National Park Service went out there, folks. And they didn't find Christopher. They couldn't see any signs of Christopher anywhere. And that was one. Take it from me, when a monster is around, you don't ever want to be there. It was one of many encounters that was featured in the David Paulides documentary called Missing 411. And it was as bizarre as you can possibly get. Christopher and others went missing on that trail. And Douglas Moore, the same thing happened to him when he entered this forest. There is a lot to this, and I'm going to be covering the very important aspects in this video. Thank you. And so when you look at this forest, this kind of darker national Texas type of forest, and you start really looking at it up close and start getting more familiar with this, it's just like a lot of animals certainly enjoy this forest. They love coming through, the trees and being able to take part in all these activities here. There's a lot of foxes, of course, that go through this forest. But it makes me aware, of the fact that there just needs to be a lot better logistics. Whenever people are going out and they're going to hike into some of these extremely off-limits type of areas, especially like the West Texas National Forest, there needs to be like a sign or something that can point them back in the direction of the normal trails, like some kind of marker or something. I almost think about the times that I've gone into these types of forests before, and it's true, there are a way you could say that there are strange things that go on in some of these forests, but when I look at it, I just wonder, why couldn't we have roadside markers like they use on the public roads all the time, to be able to really discern exactly what part of the trail you're coming in from and exactly what part of the grove of trees you're leaving behind, for example, being able to check the different markers that are on the map, And I'm going to be covering some of the key issues with this in my upcoming podcast, because I can tell you this, folks, the National Park Rangers, they are paying very close attention to this a lot. And although they don't know sometimes the exact names of the victims, they do keep a certain number of real physical descriptions of people, of what they were doing. They think it's very odd, like the Paulides documentary kind of hints towards. They think it's odd that people just disappear, and sometimes people wonder, if some kind of dangerous cult member or something is taking certain people in these woods. But I mean, beyond all of it, they tend to believe it's a lot more serious than normal everyday folks think it is. And a lot of people have disappeared in this Texas National Forest. And I do agree we need to have better trackers. We need to have people, for example, from the regular land marshal service out. Just need more people overall who can really keep an eye on things, including land marshals and similar, and track relentlessly where people are going, because these woods are full of a lot of interesting things, folks. I've been in them. I've seen the reports sometimes of key issues from up above and also, down below, as far as types of cults or similar. And so regardless of what's going on, there needs to be a way to be able to track and trace where people are going at all times. And I feel like, one of those ways needs to be done with like cameras that people can post in the actual forest. Not just like markers that they can use to track themselves and trace their own path, back to the actual original highway and similar things, but they need to have cameras that can show these various areas, especially the darker parts of the forest, because these are very slick, rugged terrain. They can be quite dangerous sometimes as well. And, it's something I want to cover, and I will be covering in an upcoming podcast and session, and also the live session, because I want to know what people really think about this. I want to hear feedback from others and from other groups, from hiking groups who have done similar activities, because of course it's getting to be too stressful out there. It's getting to be, I think, too dangerous for just doing nature-based walks and things like that, without people really starting to pay attention to where everybody is going and what time people are meeting and exactly what place, and are the park rangers informed, because most of the time they are directly informed, or they at least have intel and they have photos of people that are coming through the area. But there are times where they don't know what's going on at all as well. And so I feel like we need maps that can really coordinate how people are doing these things and what time they leave, especially. Because the animals, they really enjoy this area, but it can be very, very dangerous and sometimes hostile to new visitors and new people who are coming through the area, especially this national forest in Texas. I mean, this is quite unusual. I know people have been asking when I can get on radio and similar things about that. But folks, I'm writing the actual legal briefing and similar documents and things. I'm doing these things because the folks that are professionally kind of geared towards that thing, I don't have any incline that they're going to do them kind of the exact way they need to be done. And so I'm doing all of those things. And I also have my team rewriting certain things along the way when I need it and so on. But it's like, when I look at this situation, I feel like we need a lot more attention from the public overall. We need people who care about the fact that when you go into these national parks and you go into the forest, you have a system of people on the trail that is going to make sure you come back, that is going to watch everything along the trail, that is going to recommend people start putting cameras out there in the forest, whenever you go out there, or even go out to the lake, and similar things. I feel like we need to have this discussion now, and especially now after Summer Wells, because although it can be very alluring and extravagant and elegant for the animals and similar things to really enjoy these places, they can also be very harrowing, and terrifying places to visit for a huge amount of people, because we don't have systems in place that is really effective at showing where people are going and mapping out their exact trails that they follow and how they're going to get back to the main road, and how they're going to get out of the actual park, or how they're going to meet at XYZ location at this specific time, so that at least the county, especially the county and the marshal's office, knows what's happening out there. So again, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing the videos, commenting as you are able to. And let's get this a lot more attention than it has ever gotten, folks. Let's make sure these national forests start becoming the main headline. Thank you. They belong to some real, actual, heavy-duty outdoors hiking groups and hiking clubs, including the Craig, actually. Especially Miss Kim Flint belonged to one of these. And this is important and a very vital detail to be made aware of, because when you belong to a hiking club or hiking group like this, which is like the one that was here near Montgomery County in East Texas, outside of this very strange Texas National Forest area. Under state law, you are required to report in certain parts of the county. Whenever you belong to a hiking club, you have to report in, and it kind of has basically an enrolled roster of members and different people who are part of that group or a part of that club, who notify into the county of their activities. So if something's happening this week, they're going to officially indicate that this event is going to happen this week, and they're going to be hiking, for example, on the Moonross Valley Road. Okay? And so they have to report in and do certain specific things to showcase what their activity was for this week. And so the county always knows a certain amount. They have a certain amount of information on these hiking clubs, because under state law, especially in Texas, you have to report in if you are going to go on a group-based hiking excursion or even a solo hiking expedition in a certain area at a certain time. And the times that would be going on, because they're called community events in certain cases. Now, there are some instances where this is not followed, but for the most part, it is a requirement under state law. You can look up the charters for some of these hiking associations and the state groups that they run under. And so Bobby and Flint most likely did report in. They had to have allowed the county to know in some way that there was an event happening here. And so people knew where they were going in a lot of cases, simply because they would be required to report in. Well, what's interesting is the sheriff's office never mentioned having checked the database and checked the county records for these hiking groups and the calendar that they're running on after these people disappeared, including Flint and including, Douglas Moore. And so what's strange about this, folks, is the area of this forest, and you're going to see kind of more up close of what this is really truly like. It's just a very unsettling place. And the fact that they didn't check the actual records and check the county record books for these hiking groups is greatly alarming. It tells you people were definitely not on point and on the job at the time. And so a lot of people that we don't know about could have slipped through the cracks and vanished just by simple accounting errors and not checking the record logs. Now, even if they didn't check the books, so to speak, and check kind of the guest book registries for some of these hiking associations, there would be reports by the park rangers, guaranteed, depending on which specific forest it was, that would showcase to some extent who these individuals were, what they were doing at the time. You know, just like the Craig is required by law also to report on everybody involved in that, believe it or not. They have to do the exact same thing as far as record keeping for the parks themselves. So the park rangers would have all this documented. They wouldn't have their exact names, but they'd have documentation, and they'd be able to tell, you know, okay, they were wearing this cover overalls and things like that. And so it's strange in the case of this Texas National Forest that really was not followed up in a big way with Douglas Moore and with Shirley Flint and similar people here. You know, and Shirley Hunt in this case, you know. And it gives you kind of an uneasy feeling. And I get this distinct flavor here that this has happened in East Texas at this forest quite a bit. So there's other things that need to really be looked at. Thank you. I'll just say it right now. There is something that is going on in these woods. There's no question about that. 51-year-old James P. Ramboon Jr. sprinted off across the tundra near the Canapichou River, south of Quijane, Quebec. So this goes on a lot in Canada, as we are well aware. But it's also happening in Rhode Island. And most importantly, it's happening in some places people can't even believe, such as the West Texas Forest, which is kind of a national forest. It's kind of a landmark area for taking real expeditions. But there are these mysterious deaths right now. Dozens of hunters disappear in the U.S. each year and are never seen or heard from again. Sometimes even the missing are found deceased, but the circumstances change, and it's frequently a mystery. In one famous case in Cherokee County, Texas, sheriff deputies have searched for the missing hunter, Douglas Moore, and they found him, or at least what remains, near a pickup truck outside of the woods. He had bled to death from a single puncture wound that pierced an artery. On the ground several yards away, there was a lot of deer blood caked on the ground. An unloaded rifle lay near Moore's body, but there were no spent casings. Sheriff's investigators for years have speculated Moore shot a deer and then, thinking it was dead, unloaded his gun before field dressing it. Then the deer suddenly revived and gored Moore in the leg. But of course, more and more, this explanation does not make sense. Adding to the mystery, the deer was never found, despite diligent searches that lasted for several weeks. And then, of course, in Michigan Upper Peninsula, there's been various people who have disappeared there very recently, too. So there is something that's going on in that forest. And the more that I look at it, this Texas forest is certainly a place that needs to be watched much closer. Thank you. So overall, this case in Texas has just always been highly out of the ordinary, highly unusual. It's basically a forest in western Texas, so kind of a West Texas National Forest. It's right out there on the outskirts of Austin and also Montgomery County. And there's a lot to it. So one of the most unusual things was the fact that in Decatur, which is Decatur, Texas, more than 40 dogs disappeared from the Texas community since that same night. Robin Lewis's black Labrador and Jack went missing from the family home in Decatur in December. On that same day, Decatur Mayor Martin Woodruff's daughter lost all of her dogs from the fenced-in yard. I think it is suspicious that 3 large, friendly dogs disappeared basically on the same night from this neighborhood. And according to the Wise County Sheriff, 40 dogs have been reported missing in the last 2 months in the same area of the forest. So if this was just, some kind of random incident that for some reason somebody was kidnapping someone or something like that, there is no possible way that 40 dogs would end up being reported missing. So folks, right off the bat there, of course, there is more to this story than anyone has been told. And there are some strange things that have been happening in that forest. So I thank you. Let's make sure to get these videos out there far and wide. Spread the word. Comment, subscribe. But most importantly, let people know about these cases. Thank you. And this appears to have been getting increasingly more serious and worthy of the investigation as time has gone on. Christopher Ramirez also disappeared, age 3. Officials in the southeastern Texas area near the forest are searching for the 3-year-old Christopher Ramirez. Wednesday in Plantersville, he disappeared after chasing the neighbor's dog into the woods. The dog eventually came out, but Christopher never did. And so this goes back more to the original case that's been outlined of Douglas Moore and similar things. They have these strange events that happen right here near the West Texas forest. Sniffing dogs and helicopters were being used to help find Christopher that same night, along with the ground crew. Foul play was not suspected, but they would not return immediate calls for comment. So it's clear that there was more to these recent missing person cases in the Texas forest here, especially Douglas. And you can imagine how terrifying it would be to end up there and just have no idea whether you are truly going to get out of those woods or not. Thanks again.